Hello gamers. Now you may see that this video is titled something along the lines of the best DS game ever. Is that true? Yeah, probably not, as when I had a DS way back in ye old times of 2009, I only had 2 games for it, that being the chat rooms, which isn't really a game, and this game we are talking about now. But technically, by definition, it is the best game I have ever played on the DS. Anyways, if you haven't figured out by now, I am talking about the long-named WWE Smackdown Vs Raw featuring ECW on the Nintendo DS. 2010's in there somewhere. Now, I'm almost 1,000,000,000% sure that no one picks up a DS for its graphical capabilities, as this handheld device was made way back in 2004 and probably been underpowered in the graphics department even way back then. But saying that, SVR doesn't look bad at all. For the most part, the superstars look like themselves. There are some that look a lot like each other, for example, Christian and Chris Jericho, but there is only so much you can do to make 2 white guys with short blonde hair look different, I guess, especially with the tech they had back then. And they obviously did look different because they had the different outfits, but I clearly didn't remember who wore what. And also everything else from the rings to the other locations you can go to all look pretty good, if not just a little bit blurry. So the game looks serviceable, but how did it control? I'm just gonna say this now, I had so much problems with the controls. Not in the way that they don't make sense or they're not intuitive, it's more just a problem with the DS control setup in general, as I'm obviously used to the Xbox controllers and the PlayStation controllers where, you know, the A or X button is where it always is, the B one's where it always is. But the DS has them switched around, which took some getting used to. I would always end up hitting the wrong button and almost getting my superstar killed like at least 100 times. Also, on top of that, there are controls for submissions in the game. I never really learned how to do submissions and never used them once. But yeah, that didn't really affect my ability to be good at the game. So the main part of this game I wanted to talk about is the story, which this game has quite a large story at that, being 12 chapters long and each chapter having 4 parts to it. And all of these parts involve 1, if not more, fights against a large number of superstars. Though you may feel like you get stuck fighting the same group of people a lot. Also, I don't know if this is something you would care about. I don't really, because I semi-know how to read. But this game is not voice acted. So it's not really something that takes away from the story. And also, at the same time, I'm sure the speakers on the DS are probably really bad anyway. Like the entrance songs sound all high-pitchy and a little trash. So maybe it's for the best. Chapter 1 starts with our custom-made superstar taking a phone call from Vince McMahon about a meeting in his office to sign our brand new WWE contract. On the way there, we bump into Triple H after he had just won the WWE Championship, telling us swiftly to move aside, which we don't do, which we then get socked in the face for our efforts. So after we sign the contract, Mr. McMahon tells us to go meet his fellow Irishman, Finlay, who then proceeds to show us around the gym and then the ECW arena, and then sends us off to see the GM of ECW, Theodore Long. We are then informed that our debut match in the WWE is happening that night against the only friend we have made in the industry so far, Finlay. Luckily, he takes it fine, and we end up winning our first ever match. Walking into the ECW arena, I find the all-American Jack Swagger picking on Finley's son thing, surrogate son, I don't know, Hornswoggle, and then they get into a backstage brawl defending him. Next week, Jack Swagger is running amok in our lives and gets our next match changed from a local jobber to the Russian bruiser Vladimir. And after winning that match, he tells Hornswoggle that he has kidnapped Finley and won't let him go unless Hornswoggle attacks me. And then Finley immediately walks in. And after all this drama, a match is booked between me and Swagger at Backlash, which I of course comfortably win, squashing that beef. In the next chapter, we meet The Miz and John Morrison, who we will beef with throughout the month. Mainly for the reason that at the start of the chapter, the SmackDown Diva star Eve takes a liking to me, which of course The Miz and Morrison find unacceptable. In the third chapter, we're finally in the runnings for a belt. This one being the ECW Championship belt, currently held by Christian, but there are other stars who want a shot at the belt as well. 3 others, The Miz, Mark Henry and Evan Bourne. So a bracket system was designed for me versus The Miz, which I easily win, and then for Mark Henry versus Evan. But this match ends up not happening as Evan was attacked and injured by Mark Henry before the match, leaving me and Mark Henry to fight for the #1 contendership. I of course end up beating Henry in a Extreme Rules match. My next match is up against the champ, but not for the belt. This match is to decide who gets to pick what type of match we will partake in. However, next week we get the title shot, which I win, being crowned the ECW champion. Also, at this point I get put into a match against Shawn Michaels that is not a part of the main story, but a side quest like thing. Which, to be honest, I didn't even know that these were a thing in this game, but I'm very happy I found it out, as at the end of the match we do the Suck It with HBK. Chapter 4 is a transitional chapter of sorts, mainly as this chapter sees Stephanie McMahon trying to sign us to her Raw roster, to the point where she would send Ted DiBiase to fight us in our apartment, in what ends up being a kind of setup, as it is claimed that I injure Ted, so I have to take his place in the fight, which was a ladder match, but we do not know who we are fighting. But then it turns out we are fighting one of the best at ladder matches, and also one of my favorite WWE wrestlers of all time, CM Punk. After fighting him and winning the ladder match, we take a look inside the briefcase, and it will turn out that we have been played. And in the briefcase was a contract for Raw. But like, personally, I would have probably fought on Raw anyways, because Raw was my favorite of the 3 brands. So, you know, they wasted that time. Chapter 5 opens with our first time on Monday Night Raw, if you ignored the match we did against Shawn Michaels, fighting Santino Marella in our first ever match. However, it's not the match that is important, but what we see backstage after leaving the match. It turns out that going to Raw was a plan put together by Chris Jericho, as we catch him talking to Miss McMahon. We confront Steph about this, but she takes off and runs away. Chris staying behind to fight us. But after fighting on Sunday and then Monday, my health was a little bit too low. So I cheesed the fight and just constantly whacked him over the head with a steel chair. After the fight, we end up finding Steph. And then she informs us that what we did was wrong. I don't remember what we did, but hey. And now we have to fight a gauntlet style match against Cody Rhodes, Kane and Jericho. However, before the match, Jericho whacks us with a steel chair whilst we're talking to Kane. Which, after what I did in our previous fight, I honestly don't blame him. I would probably do it. After waking up in hospital, CM Punk is there to greet us. And it turns out that Stephanie McMahon has pulled us from fighting in the SummerSlam card. However, Punk has a plan to use risque photos of Stephanie to bribe our way back into SummerSlam. Making it to the pay-per-view, Jericho seems shocked to find out that we will be fighting him. And to find out what type of match we will be fighting in, Vince McMahon pulls out a massive wheel with all the different types of matches on it. And then he spins the wheel, and whatever it lands on, we have to fight in. However, of course, it landed on a one-on-one match, which is the same as every other match we've partaken in so far. Chapter 6 starts as we frantically look for our phone which we lost, as we are waiting on a phone call from the GM. It's not like we have emails or any other way that she can contact us, but hey, it turns out that Ted DiBiase has taken the phone, so of course we fight him to get it back. Of course, him claiming that this was all a practical joke. Anyways, as soon as we get the phone back, Steph calls us saying that we are going to partake in a bunch of matches to see who will then become the #1 contender and get a shot at the Intercontinental Championship, currently held by CM Punk. Ted says we should work together, and for some reason I go along with this, and we end up injuring Ted's opponent, Rey Mysterio, backstage. And just before our fight with Kane, it is informed that Ted has played us, and due to attacking Rey, we are no longer allowed a shot for the championship. However, after talking to Stephanie, we somehow convinced her that it was all Ted's idea, and we are allowed to fight again. So we get our match with Kane, which we clearly win, and then it comes down to a match with Ted to see who gets to fight CM Punk, and of course we pick up the dub. And after a long fought match, we take the win against CM Punk, picking up another belt in the process. Chapter 7 is quite an interesting one, as it is the first time I play as someone who is not my custom-made superstar. We play as the one and only CM Punk fighting against Batista to see who gets me on our Survivor Series team. Punk winning the match. So we are joining the team of CM Punk, John Cena and Rey Mysterio. So we are off to the hospital to tell the recovering Cena that we are joining his team. However, Rey still doesn't believe that I got set up by Ted DiBiase and fights me to keep me from seeing John Cena. With Rey still not trusting me even after talking to John, we put Survivor Series aside for now as we focus on winning the King of the Ring tournament. Our first match being against Kofi Kingston and then Christian. The final match against the Legend Killer himself, Randy Orton. After winning King of the Ring, we are rewarded with a shot at John Cena's Heavyweight Championship. The next chapter, that being Chapter 8, starts with Kane and Ted DiBiase attacking me. Luckily, John Cena comes to my defense. Cena taking on Kane, obviously as me playing as John Cena. And then my custom-made superstar taking on Ted. And Rey Mysterio ends up leaving our Survivor Series team as he feels bad for not trusting me. Next up is our match against John Cena for the Heavyweight Championship, which I clearly win. Now, however, we do need to replace the leaving Rey Mysterio for our Survivor Series team. And if you couldn't tell by now, I really like Shawn Michaels. So I chose him to be a part of my team. At the first match at Survivor Series, it is the Heartbreak Kid against Cody Rhodes. Of course, me playing as HBK. Next up, my custom superstar fights Rey Mysterio, which was a respectful match where I obviously took the dub. It would seem, however, that Stephanie, after fighting hard to get me on her roster, has now pulled some background shenanigans, and I'm no longer a part of the Raw roster, moving my way up or down depending on how you look at it, to SmackDown. In Chapter 9, unlike the other chapters, there isn't really a transition chapter between Raw and SmackDown, as the rated R superstar Edge punches us backstage. After this event, we show up for our first match against the one and only Mr. Kennedy. Edge then continues to mess with us, pulling out of his match with the Big Show, so we have to take his place. Then after that match, Edge decides to hit us with a chair for whatever reason. However, next we finally get to fight Edge in a match that isn't a one-on-one match, but a steel cage match for the first ever time. against obviously the aforementioned Edge, who by the way has the coolest entry song of all time. This match, however, has a little catch to it, that being that the loser of the match has to leave SmackDown. And I mean, like always, I win, so we see Edge having to leave SmackDown. Two big events in Chapter 10. First being our run at the United States Championship, which first must see us fight Vladimir to see who gets a shot at taking Jeff Hardy's US Championship belt. Now, of course, I win both matches. And the rest of the chapter involves us fighting Vlad for a spot in the Royal Rumble. And then we go on a bit of a mission, as we very unluckily got set up and drew the #1 entry for the Royal Rumble, even though 2 people have won the Rumble from the first spot before, including our friend in the game, at least in my headcanon, that of course being the one and only Shawn Michaels. But at the behest of Triple H, we start to trade up numbers. However, immediately Chapter 11 sees us dealing with the aftermath of cheating in the Royal Rumble, as apparently we're not allowed to trade for a better number. So this sees us take part in 2 gauntlet matches, and then a shocking return. Edge shows up at our home telling us to check our computer. As it turns out, someone has released a video of me attacking The Undertaker. Although you never see me do it, and I'm pretty sure I didn't because I don't remember doing it. However, the dead man is not very happy about being attacked from behind. And then after the second gauntlet match, Triple H appears on the stage and starts talking to us. And then The Undertaker appears out of nowhere. This then follows a long scene of The Undertaker following me all around the map until he finally confronts me in my own home. However, Jeff Hardy shows up to give us a chance to get away. It is then decided to settle this disagreement that me and the dead man are having at a match at No Way Out. Halfway through, Edge arrives on the scene. And let's not forget that not too long ago we were the reason that Edge lost his job. However, he is now here to defend us, showing the unedited video of the attack on The Undertaker. And it shows that The Miz is the one truly behind the attack, also strongly implying that the King of Kings is behind this all. Chapter 12, we're finally here, boys. The final chapter involves me putting together a team to go against Triple H and his own team. However, this chapter starts with an open challenge being set where anyone in the WWE, no matter what brand, can take me on at any time for 24 hours and can select to win any of my belts if they defeat me. This has me fight the likes of Jack Swagger for the ECW Championship, Chris Jericho for the Heavyweight Championship, and Shelton for the US Championship. After this, I start on getting my team up and running. My first pick, of course, being my best friend HBK, ignoring the fact that I don't think 2010 HBK would ever fight against Triple H. But hey, and then we go after the one and only Jeff Hardy, as he's been very cool with us and has also defended us multiple times, even though we've taken one of his belts from him. So Hardy fights Orton, and HBK takes on Batista, 2 members of Triple H's team. In 2 weeks is WrestleMania, where I will be fighting Triple H, putting all of my belts on the line, along with his WWE Championship. Winner takes all. However, there's a stipulation, a problem we have to deal with first. Vince McMahon promised Edge a chance to get into that match, so he has to fight me, and if he wins, the WrestleMania match will become a triple threat match. But of course, I win. So it's now the WrestleMania main event. And of course, as my superstar has never dropped an L before, we defeat the game, the King of Kings, the cerebral assassin. And for the first time in WWE history, at least I assume, we unite all of the belts, holding all possible belts for a male superstar at the time, apart from the Tag Team Championship. So, this has been a video on the first good WWE game on the DS, and also the last WWE game on the DS. A game that will most likely be lost to time, like a lot of the games from the DS era, and I don't think this is anyone's favourite WWE game or SVR game, but to my knowledge, which isn't very strong. It is the only WWE game with an ambulance match, which is kind of cool, and has a pretty good story, if not the best at times. However, I'm not a hardcore WWE fan, so unlike in the video I did previously on the Breaking Point story for the F1 games, I don't know if a lot of these tropes are ripped from real life, like Breaking Point did. So it's all fresh to me, which makes it a little bit more enjoyable. Or fresh to me, I played it before, but I don't remember it because I was like 9. So apart from the fact that this game has already made me start pressing the wrong buttons in other games, she was a pretty enjoyable time. And if you think so, maybe drop like, maybe don't, maybe check out the game if you want to. You don't need a DS, because I'm pretty sure, I'm not going to say I played it this way, but I'm pretty sure there's emulators for it. Just do some Googling.